All right, let's begin by davening that the fruits of our learning should help to bring home the hostages and protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael and all of the innocents and bring a speedy end to the war. So with that, yes, I've been traveling. I didn't get a chance to listen to the recording from last week. I am going to make a couple of notes about what I said, but hold on a second. All right, so Michael Schwartz, so wait a second. Paul, you weren't here last week.
No, no. And the week before, I wasn't.
And the week
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Okay, okay. So because you weren't here, and because what I did last week, I thought was clear, but there were some things that I wanted to comment on that I didn't get a chance to comment. So I am going to go. I'm going to go through this part of the Gemara, I think, one last time, and then we'll move on. The other thing I want to say is, again, I really appreciate everybody coming on time. I am going to try to limit the time of the class to an hour or maybe just over an hour. I know I have a tendency to go on, but my sense is that you can tell me what you think, but my sense is that after an hour, I think it may be hard to keep following things. I think it's better if I try to compress these things into an hour so that it doesn't get to be too overwhelming. So let's see how that goes for today. So the sugya here is discussing this phenomenon that Reish Lakish brings up, that the Torah did not write an explicit azhara for Inui on Yom Kippur. And Reish Lakish says it didn't do that because it couldn't. There wasn't a way to word that, so it just didn't do it. And Rav Ashi ultimately says no, there was a way of doing it, and then the Gemara just leaves that. In other words, we don't have a reply from Reish Lakish, or in Reish Lakish's favor. The Gemara just leaves that, and then the Gemara comes on and brings this Braita, which is from the Sifra. It says Vitana Maiti La Mehacha. So the Tana, as Rashi explains, Tana Maiti Azhara Inui Mehacha. The Tana brings an Azhara for Inui from here. And then we'll read through this again. It's going to bring it based on a series of drashot. And ultimately what this Tana is going to try to prove is that while the Torah did not have a pasuk that explicitly states an azhara, we can learn it. We can learn it out. We can learn out the azhara from comparing it to melacha on Yom Kippur in some way. And just to remind ourselves, why is this an important question? What does it matter to us whether the Torah gave us an azhara for Inui or not? Why should we care?
I'm not absolutely sure about this answer, but I'm going to guess that if there's not an explicit ansara, we're not necessarily high of Doraita.
Okay, so in a sense, yes. In other words, there's this idea that we mentioned that whenever the Torah gives us an onesh, it also gives us an azhara. and as we saw with the just a second, I'm going to bring the psukim. Just a sec. Right. So essentially, right, we have these psukim. These are all the psukim of Inui and Malacha for Yom Kippur. And as we see in Parshat Emor, it says, on the one hand, in Pasuk Kavcha, it says, "V'chol melacha lo ta'asu be'etzem hayom hazeh." And then two psukim later, it says, "V'chol nefesh asher ta'aseh kol melacha be'etzem hayom hazeh, v'avarati et nefesh ahi mikerav hama." So it's the system that the Torah uses that first it gives you the azhara, gives you the warning. In other words, it defines the isur. And only once the isur is defined, then it tells you what the onesh is. And this is parallel to onesh of Beit Din, that if in order for someone to be chayav and onesh in Beit Din, they first have to have a warning. They have to have an azhara. Specifically, two witnesses have to say to somebody just before they're about to do an isur that if they do this isur, they're going to be chayav a particular onesh. And only then, and then if they do it, then they can be brought before Beit Din, and then the Eidim could testify, and then they would get the onesh. So in a sense, the Torah does. The Torah gives us first the azara, and then it gives us the onesh. So we have this problem because it gives us an onesh for inui nefesh. It says kikol nefesh asher lo tuneh be'etzem hayom hazeh v'nichrata me'amea. But there is the pasuk that gives us an azhara. The other psukim, ta'anu et nafshotechem v'initem et nafshotechem v'initem et nafshotechem v'initem et nafshotechem v'initem et nafshotechem. All of those are telling you that you have to be mitaneh, but it's not formulated as a love. It's not formulated as something you're not allowed to do, which would be apparently what we think of as the necessary prerequisite for having an onesh. So we want to know how do I get this azhara? So let's go back to the Gemara, which is here. So this Tana is going to learn it from here. It learns it from, we start with this pasuk, V'initem et nafshotechem b'chol melacha lo ta'asu. So this is, right, this is actually the last pasuk. I mentioned this last time. The other girsot that bring the first pasuk back in Achrei Mot. For our purposes, it doesn't matter. Yachol yehei anush karet al tosefet melacha. So it could be that one would be chayav for tosefet melacha. They'd be chayav an onesh of karet for tosefet melacha. So again, what's tosefet melacha?
Malacha done in the period either before or after.
Finish your sentence.
Malacha that is done in the period either before or after. Oh, in this case, Yom Kippur.
Okay, very good. So this Tana is assuming that there's such a thing as a tosefet to Yom Kippurim. There's a tosefet in time. There's a time right before and a time right after that is appended to Yom Kippurim. And as I mentioned a couple of times, because, back when we started this sugya, I showed you in the Sifra that immediately preceding this Braita, the Tana there gives us the basis for the Tosefet. And we're not going to go through it again. It's going to come up again in the Gemara. It will come up in the Gemara on Daf Bet. So we're going to leave it for now. But the point is, this Tana is assuming that there is such a thing as Tosefet for Yom Kippurim, and doing Melacha during that time is going to be called Tosefet Melacha. So it could be that you'll be Chayav Karet if you do Melacha during this Tosefet, Talmud Lomar, but we have a pasuk that seems to exclude the Chiyuv Karet, because it says, V'chol nefesh she'taseh kol melacha be'etzem hayom hazeh, v'avarati et hanefesh ahi mikerav ama, al yitzumo shel yom anush karet, ve'eno anush karet al tosefet melacha. So this pasuk, because it says be'etzem hayom hazeh, you're chayav karet, that apparently excludes tosefet from being chayav karet. So you're not chayav karet if you do melacha in the tosefet. So it could be, in other words, now we come to this conclusion that you're not chayav karet for the tosefet melacha, but maybe you'll be chayav for inui during this time of tosefet. Talmud Lamar, so I have a parallel pasuk of inui that tells me that inui is only a chiyuv be'etzem hayom. Al yitzumo shel yom anush karet, ve'eno anush karet al tosefet inui. Okay, so what? So what have we done? We've excluded this time of tosefet for both melacha and for inui from being chayav karet. And I think Paul brought up a few weeks ago, and we did this. So then what is it? So apparently what it's telling me is that there's a mitzvah aseh to not do melacha, to refrain from melacha, and to be mitaneh during that time. But if you do melacha or you aren't mitaneh during that time, then there is no chiyuv karet. That's what we get from this so far. So yachol lo yeheh bichlal onesh. So now I've said fine. I've excluded this tosefet from a chiyuv of karet. There is no onesh if you do melacha or you're not mitaneh during the tosefet. Aval yeheh musar tosefet melacha. But maybe the azhara of melacha that applies to Yom Kippurim will also apply to the Tosefet. Talmud Lomar b'chol melacha lo ta'asu be'etzem hayom hazeh. Right, so I have a separate pasuk that tells me that that the isur lav, or what we call the azhara, melacha, that's excluded from the Tosefet. Al yitzumo shel yom yehei muzar, ve'eno muzar al tosefet melacha. So, of course, now we'll go to the next part. Yachol lo yehei muzar al tosefet melacha. So we'll say, fine. And I have an azhara and an onesh for melacha on Yom Kippur. There is no azhara or onesh for melacha on the tosefet of Yom Kippur. Aval yehei muzar al tosefet inui. Maybe there is nonetheless an azhara for inui during this time. And this I'm going to learn out using a kal v'chomer, which is also referred to as din. So, what's the din? V'din hu. Uma melacha shenoheget b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim eino muzar aleh. I would say as follows. What if, just as melacha, which is practiced on Shabbos and Yom Tov, but there is no azhara for it. Inui, in other words, there is no azhara for what?
Inui.
Ma melacha shenoheget b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim eino muzhar aleha. I'm not muzhar on melacha. When am I not muzhar on melacha?
The Tosefet.
B'tosefet. So this is that's the din. Just like I see malacha, which is in fact noheget. In other words, there is an isur malacha and a chiyuv karet for doing malacha on Shabbos and Yantiv, but a no muzhar alab, and I'm not muzhar for the tosefet. Inui sheino noheg b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim. Eino din shelo yehein muzhar alav. So inui, which is not practiced on any other Yantiv or Shabbos, isn't it bedin? In other words, kal b'chomer, that I should not be mushar alav. In other words, there isn't an iser lav for inui when
In the Tosefet.
in the Tosefet of Yom Kippur. Let's go through this again. I want to make sure you understand the kal v'chomer. So I'm saying as follows: what we have before we begin the kal v'chomer, again, what are the things that we've proven? We know that there's an azhara and an onesh for malacha on Yom Kippur. We also know that there is no azhara and no onesh for malacha on the tosefet of Yom Kippur. Those are now givens. Those are things that I've proven. But I might say, yachol lo yehem muzhar tosefet malacha, val yehem muzhar tosefet dinui. But maybe, nonetheless, there is an azhara, there's an isur lav for inui in this time of tosefet. So I'll say it's a kal v'chomer from malacha, because malacha is chamur. In what sense is malacha chamur?
It is prohibited on Shabbat and Yom Tov in general.
Right. So it's, in other words, it's not only that on Yom Kippur you're not allowed to do malacha, it's prohibited also on Shabbos and Yantiv. So that's chamur vis-a-vis inui. Why? What's the kula of inui? Why is inui kal?
Because it is not prohibited on Shabbat and Yom Tov.
Right. In other words, it's only prohibited on one day out of the year. So it's kal. It has a kula. So I could say as follows: if malacha, which is chamur, and it's practiced on Shabbos and Yontif, and it doesn't have an azhara or an onesh for tosefet, then kol shekain, that inui, which is only practiced one day of the year, should not have an azhara for the tosefet. Right? That's the kal v'chomer. So what does that yield me? And there's no pushback from that. So as we consider that to be a proof. So now what have I proven? That there's no azhara or onesh for malacha in the tosefet. There's also no azhara or onesh for the inui in the tosefet. But now the Gemara says, azhara inui shel yom atzmo lo lamadnu minai. But what I'm missing is the azhara for Yom Kippur itself for inui. Right? That's our original question. Where do I see that there's an azhara for inui on Yom Kippur? So that I don't know. So the Braita continues, and it makes the following proof. It says, Lo yomar onesh mimlacha, d'gemar me'inui. Let the Torah not give us an onesh by mlacha. In other words, the Torah didn't have to give me a pasuk that says explicitly that there's an onesh for melacha on Yom Kippur, because I could have learned it from inui. how would I have learned that there's an onesh from melacha from inui? I would say as follows: Uma inui sheino noheg b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim anush karet. Melacha shenoheget b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim lo kol shekain. So what's the limud? That inui is kal, right? We just had that assumption. Inui is kal vis-a-vis melacha because it's only noheg one day out of the year. So if I'm chayav karet for inui, which is only nahug one day out of the year, so kol shekain I should be chayav melacha, which is nahug on every Shabbos and every Yom Tov. Lama ne'amar. So now that I've said that, now I want to know why did the Torah go out of its way to give me an explicit pasuk telling me that I'm chayav karet for melacha and Yom Kippur? I didn't need it to tell me because I could have learned it out using this kal v'chomer. So the Braita says mufne lahakish v'ladun mimenu gzera shava. So it's mufne. What does mufne mean?
It's free to be used for a drash.
It's free to be used for a drush. In other words, I don't need it to tell me what the pshat of it tells me, because the pshat of it is now superfluous. So I can use it as a basis to learn out something else from it. It's mufne. It's open to be darshaned and to be used for a gzeira shava. So what would be the gzeira shava? Ne'amar onesh bi'inui, v'ne'amar onesh b'mlacha. Both of them have an onesh. That's going to be the basis of the gzeira shava. So what will I say? Ma melacha lo anash el im kain he's here. Af inui lo anash el im kain he's here. So just like we saw that the Torah only gave us an onesh for melacha after having also given us an azhara, I'll learn out now by gzeira that if that's true by melacha, so then this pasuk of azhara that's now superfluous for melacha, I can use that to say that that an azhara must also apply to inui. In other words, the Torah didn't tell me explicitly an azhara by inui, but now I'm going to learn it out using this gzeira shava, that just like the Torah wouldn't give us an onesh for melacha without an azhara, the Torah also doesn't give us an onesh for inui without first giving us an azhara. So the azhara, as it were, I'm going to derive from melacha. That's actually the end of the Braita. But the Gemara doesn't like this. Gemara says, Ika lamifrach. I could break this down. In other words, I can challenge this Braita. I can challenge the Gzeira Shava that the Braita just gave us. What would be the challenge? Mali inui shelo hutar michlalo. Tomar bimlacha shutra michlala. So, what does hutar michlalo mean? What does that mean?
There are no exceptions to it.
Or punkt verkehr. Hutar michlalo. I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't say it right. Shelo hutar michlalo means what you said. There are no exceptions. In other words, it has not been released or undone from its general rule. In other words, so what's the general rule of Inui? That you're chayav karet. The Torah says that explicitly. And there are no exceptions to that midioraita. And in brackets, we'll just say, it does that, what does it mean, shelo hutar miklo? Because you'll say, what? But if if it's a matter of pikuach nefesh, there is an exception, right? There's an exception for pikuach nefesh, but what it means is there's not built into the isur itself. The exception of pikuach nefesh is not an exception that's particular to inui nefesh on Yom Kippur. That's it for the whole Torah. So that's not applicable here. Hutar miklalo means that there will be an exception built into that Isur itself. So there are no exceptions to the Isur of Inui Nefesh. So this will be my kasha. Inui has no exceptions. So that makes it Chamur. Tomar b'mlacha shehutra michala, would you say that the same thing by melacha, which in fact is hutra michala? There are exceptions to melacha on Yom Kippur and Shabbat and Yom Tov. So until now, right, in other words, the Braita was always going on the assumption that melacha is chamur vis-a-vis inui. The chumrah of melacha is that it's nahug on Shabbos and Yom Tov as well as Yom Kippur, and that's the kula of Inui, because it's only nahug one day out of the year, only on Yom Kippurim. But now Ika Mifrach, I could say, but wait, there's a problem with that, because there's also a chumrah of in Inui that is not in Malacha. The chumrah of Inui is that it's lo hutra michlalo, and Malacha is kein hutra michlala. So once I say that, what's the problem? What's the pircha? What does this challenge that we just said before?
It challenges our original Kal V'chomer.
What does it challenge? Tell me specifically what it what we just said that it challenges.
So the original Kal V'chomer.
What did the Gemara just say? What was the Gemara's proof? What did the Gemara say?
So the Gemara said that, it initially said that Shabbat is chamor, because the prohibition applies on Shabbat and Yom Tov as well as Yom Kippur, and it says that Inui is kula because is kal because it's only one day a year, and so this new Homer river flips that.
Okay, but that's not what the Gemara is challenging. The Gemara doesn't say that that's not true. What did the Gemara just say that is now being challenged? The Gemara used the Kal V'chomer to do what?
To prove that Inui Nefesh, that the ownership applies for Inui Nefesh.
No. What did the Gemara just do? The Gemara said, again, so I needed the Kal V'chomer is a kind of a device that I needed for what I wanted to prove. What did I want to prove?
That the pasuk is mufneh.
And what will that prove?
We can then use it to show that that the Inui is kal.
No, okay. Wait. What's the whole thing that I want to prove? What is the main thing that this sugya is trying to prove?
We want to prove. We're trying to find the verse that shows that there's an azara for Inui.
Good. How did the Tana prove that?
By the Kal V'chomer.
No. How did the Tana prove that? The Kal V'chomer itself didn't prove that. I needed the Kal V'chomer in order to what? In order to make Gzeira Shava. And once I have the Gzeira Shava, that's the proof. So let's go through it again. The Kal V'chomer told me that Malachaz, right, Malachaz Chamur, because it's Nahug on Shabbos and Yontiv, and Inui is Kal because it's only Nahug on Yom Kippur. So once I know that, I could prove that without a pasuk that Malacha is Chayav Karet. There's a Chayav Karet of Malacha. Why don't I need the pasuk to tell me? Because I would learn out from a Kal V'chomer from Inui that Malacha is Chayav Karet. In other words, if Inui is Chayav Karet and Inui is Kal, then Kal V'chomer Malacha, which is Chamur, will also be Chayav Karet. So once I've done that, I can say, okay, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that Malacha is Chayav Karet. So why did the Torah give me a pasuk telling me that Malacha is Chayav Karet? Why did it give me that pasuk? So that's what Michael Schwartz started to say. It's now mufne. Now it's open for me to make a drasha. So the drasha is going to be that just like the Torah is only ma'anish for malacha after it gave an azhara, so too the Torah is only ma'anish for inui nefesh with an azhara. So the azhara is not explicit, but I understand that it's implied, because if it's true by malacha, which is chamur, certainly it has to be true by inui, which is kal. That's what the Gemara, that's what the Breita said, and that's what the Gemara is being mafrich. That's what the Gemara wants to undo, because it's saying the Gemara is now saying back to the Breita. That is, your Gzeira Shava is only possible because of the Kal V'chomer that let you learn out the Onesh of Malacha from Inui. And the way you learn that out is by assuming that Malacha is Chamur and Inui is Kal. But what if I tell you Inui is Chamur and Malacha is Kal? Then you can't say a Kal V'chomer. So, in other words, it doesn't mean that the original Kal V'chomer is wrong, but it's canceled out, because now I can't say that Malacha is Chamur vis-a-vis Inui in every case, because there's a case where Inui is Chamur and Malacha is Kal. Once I say that, I can't make a Kal V'chomer. If I can't make the Kal V'chomer, that means I need the pasuk of Azhara for Melacha. I thought I didn't need it and I could use it for Gzeira Shava. But now the Gemara says, no. The Torah told me a pasuk of Azhara by Melacha because I need it for itself. I can't learn it out from Inui. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's what I mean. The Ika Lemifrach, the Pircha, is ultimately on the Gzeira Shava, but Michael, you weren't completely off, because it's a counter to the original Gzeira, to the original Kal V'chomer. It's a counter to that Kal V'chomer. But the Pircha is to say your Gzeira Shava doesn't work. The Gzeira Shava doesn't work because it's the foundation of the Gzeira Shava was a Kal V'chomer, and I can undo your Kal V'chomer. I can cancel out not undo it, I can cancel it out, because I can say a Kal V'chomer the other way around. So then
just to clarify one thing.
Sure.
So part of what I'm getting from this is that in order for a clause to be mufna, or in order to be mufna,
Yes.
based on a kal v'chomer, the kal v'chomer needs to apply not just in one case but in every case.
Yesh lomar. Yes. In other words, it has to, right, the chamur always has to be chamur and the kal always has to be kal. And that will be true whether or not I'm trying to accomplish, in other words, here it's a two-tiered process because I make the kal v'chomer, then based on the kal v'chomer, I have a pasuk that's mufna, and now I can make a gzeres shava. But anytime I make a kal v'chomer, for whatever purpose, in order to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish with it, it has to be absolute. Otherwise, it's not a kal v'chomer. So once I say something is both kal and chamur, and this is also kal and chamur, so I can't make a kal v'chomer anymore. Right? Basically, what you said. So,
Shell,
yes.
I'm not sure that I understood, but I want to ask it this way. It seems to me that there is a redundancy.
Okay.
Now, there are two possibilities. Either the redundancy is used to do a drasha, or you prove that that is what seems to be a redundancy isn't a redundancy. Is this what you want to explain?
Yeah. So right. So let's add some perush to your lemilim shulchan. In other words, the idea of having a pasuk that's mufneh is based on the idea that it's redundant. That, or right, the way I put it is that the Torah gave me a pasuk that apparently I don't need. What would be the redundancy? Not that the pasuk is literally repeated, but because I could have learned the same thing out without that pasuk.
Yes,
So
then it's redundant. This means it's redundant.
Right. So in that sense, it's redundant. So what the Gemara here is doing is saying in the Tana that we're talking about, Tana, the Breita here that we have, this Tana seems to be saying that the pasuk of Isur Melacha on Yom Kippur is redundant. I don't need it. I could have learned out. I'm sorry, that Onesh Melacha. That Onesh Melacha is redundant because I could have learned out Onesh Melacha from the Onesh of Inui. So now it's redundant. So it means, and what's our assumption? Our assumption is that nothing is redundant in the Torah, really. So it must be there to teach me something else. So I'm going to learn out about the process that it exhibits. The process that exhibits is that first there's an azhara from melacha, and that the Torah gave us this pasuk of onesh from melacha. So I don't need the onesh melacha to tell me the actual onesh, because that I could have learned out. But I need the process. I need azhara and onesh. Once I know that there's a process of azhara and onesh from melacha, and I have a pasuk that's mufne, then I can say that process also must apply to inui nefesh based on the gzeres shava. So now, actually, before we go into the next pircha, what I want to emphasize here is this is an interesting gzeres shava. Usually, gzeres shava is based on specific words. That there's a word here, and it's the same as the word here, and if the word if the word means X in the first context, it's going to mean X in the second context. That's the basic idea of gzeres shava. So here, it's not based on words; it's based on onesh. That there's an onesh for melacha and there's an onesh for inui. So it's not based on the big, and actually the words are not the same. So if you recall, the onesh for each of them is karet, but the onesh for inui nefesh is expressed as karet. What's the onesh for melacha? So we learned out also from there that this is that Habanati at the Nefesh Mikar is the definition of karet. That's the Torah defining what karet is, but it's not a one-to-one correspondence of words. So the Gzeira Shava is based on the idea that I have two Isurim that the Torah tells me I'm not allowed to do on Yom Kippur, and the Isur of Inui is Chayav Karet, and the Yisur of Malacha is Chayav Karet. So based on the fact that the pasuk of Malacha that's a Chiyuv of Karet is superfluous, is redundant, based on the fact that it's redundant, I can say that I don't need it to tell me the onesh per se, but I need it to tell me that just like by Malacha, first there was an Azhara and then there's an Onesh, so also by Inui Nefesh, there's an implied Azhara and an Onesh. That is, the Torah wouldn't give me the Onesh without there having been an Azhara. So the Azhara is not Mifurash, but it will now be implied. Okay. But I wanted to...
In the Mikra, there are many times you have tikbolot. So
yes,
you say the same thing in two ways, but the interpretation always tries to show that it's not the same, that there's something special about that you repeat it in another way.
Yes, and that's why this is a little bit tricky. But what I just told you, the Gemara says elsewhere that we understand that is karet, and this is one of the places, or maybe this is the place in the Torah that is, in a sense, explaining to me what karet is. But otherwise, normally, if there's a variation in language, it is there to teach me something. So here, the variation in language is to teach me the definition of karet. That's what it's here for. Okay, so again, what I want to emphasize is that what we're assuming now about the Gzeira Shava is the Gzeira Shava is based on these two psukim that talk about the Onesh for Inui and the Onesh for Melacha, and the Gzeira Shava between them is based on the fact that they both have this Onesh of Karet. So on that point, no, wait. So on that point, that's how the Tana wants to learn. The Tana wants to learn by saying, I didn't need this pasuk of Onesh by Melacha. It's redundant based on my Kal V'chomer. And so I'll say it's mufne to learn out this process of Azhara and Onesh. And now I can say that just like there's Azhara and Onesh by Melacha, there's Azhara and Onesh by Inui. And then the Gemara, so now the Gemara challenges the Gzeira Shava. It challenges by saying the tashtit, the foundation for your Gzeira Shava, was based on the idea that Inui is kal vis-a-vis Melacha, which is chamur. But I can cancel your kal v'chomer out by saying, Mali Inui shelo hutar michlalo, tomar b'melacha shutra michlala. You can't say the same thing by Melacha, which is hutra michlala, And therefore, in other words, and how is malacha hutra michlala?
There are exceptions to the rule. For example, korbanot on Shabbat and Yom Tov.
Very good. So, in other words, the Torah tells us you're not allowed to do malacha on Shabbat and Yom Tov, but it also tells us that you bring korbanot, which means you're going to do shchita, you're going to burn fire, you're going to do isurim of malacha. So the Torah was matir miklala shel malacha. It released malacha from certain aspects of its isur. So it's kal. That's a kula. That means it's not as chamur as inui. So once I say that, I no longer have a kal v'chomer to tell me that malacha is chamur and inui is kal, and therefore the pasuk of onesh by malacha on Yom Kippurim is not redundant. I need it to tell me itself because I can't learn out on onesh karet of malacha from inui. I can't make a kal v'chomer, so I don't have gzeira shava. So I don't have an azhara li'inui min haTorah. I don't have a basis to tell me there's an azhara for inui on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara now is going to try a it's gonna flip the script. It's gonna say, what if we try it the other way around? In other words, as it were, maybe the Tana maybe really meant to say something else. Maybe, it should have said Ela lo yomar onesh beinui. Let's start from the other side. Let the Torah not give an onesh, not give us a pasuk of onesh by inui. The gemar mi malacha. I could have learned the onesh of inui from the onesh of malacha. And what would be? How would I learn it? I learned it from the kal v'chomer. Ma malacha shutra michlala anush karet. Inui shelo hutar michlalo lo kol shekain. Right? I could say now that I'm thinking that malacha is kal, I could say if the Torah gave me an onesh of karet mefurash by malacha, and that's kal, then kal v'chomer, that there must be an onesh of karet for inui, which is chamur because it's lo hutar michlala. Lama ne'amar. So why, in fact, would the Torah tell me the onesh at all? Why should it tell me the onesh of inui? So it's mufne lahakish ladon mimen gzeira shava. So now I'll say that the pasuk of onesh for inui is mufne. I don't need it for itself. I could have learned it out from Malka. And then I'll say nemar onesh bi'inui v'nemar onesh b'mlacha. The gzeira shava is there's an onesh by inui and there's an onesh by melacha. Ma melacha anash v'hisir. Afinui anash v'hisir. And I could say, now I can make the gzeira shava, but I'll just say that it's going to start from inui, that the pasuk of onesh by inui, that's I learn out from the onesh of melacha, and I have the process that there's both onesh and azhara by melacha, so there's an implied azhara along with the onesh of inui. So of course the Gemara is going to challenge this. What's the challenge? What's problematic with what the Gemara just said?
We already know that the kal v'chomer that it's based on has been canceled out as well.
Excellent, right? So ikal mifrach. I can ask a kasha on your limud. I could say ma malacha shekhein noheged b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim tomar b'inui sheino noheg b'shabbatot v'yamim tovim. In other words, like Michael Werner just said, I can cancel out your kal v'chomer. I already know this. I know I can cancel out the kal v'chomer because there's a tzad chumra to malacha and which is a tzad kula for the inui nefesh. So no matter how I slice it, I don't what the Gemara ends up with at this point is it doesn't really understand how the Tana of this Braita wants to conclude that there's an Azara Inui as learned from Melacha. Because Ikalamifrach, I could break it up by undoing the Kal V'chomer that it's based on. So Ravina comes and answers this question. Amar Ravina, Haitana etzem gamar. In other words, you thought until now that the Gzeira Shava that the Braita was making was based on Onesh. It was based on the fact that there's an Onesh by Malacha and there's an Onesh by Inui, and that will be the basis of the Gzeira Shava. But that doesn't work, as we see. In other words, the Gemara says that can't possibly work. So Ravina, I'll tell you, no, you misunderstand the Tana. The Tana is actually basing his Gzeira Shava on actual words, etzem and etzem. Be'etzem hayom hazeh by inui nefesh, and be'etzem hayom hazeh by melacha. And that will be the basis for the Kal V'chomer. And we'll go into that in a little more detail in a moment. And he says, mufne, in other words, both of those psukim of where, in other words, the words etzem are mufne on both sides. Di'ilo mufne, because if it's not mufne, that is, if this Gzeira Shava is not based on the fact that etzem here and etzem there are both mufne, then I can ask the kashas that I just asked. In other words, if you think it's based on onesh, then I have all these pirchot. I have these kashas. So it must be that it's based on etzem. So the Gemara continues, it says, Lai, afnuye mufne. It certainly is mufne. And how does that work? Chamisha krai ktivi b'melacha. So before we go on, I wanted to maybe we should go on. I hope this doesn't confuse you, but what this is like a sidebar for what we just learned. There's a couple of things about the way the Gemara, what the Gemara just went through with this Braita and the Pirchot, that I find difficult. And one of them is the Gemara says elsewhere, "Ein onshin min hadin." And what that means is that we can't apply an onesh to an isur Torah based on a kal v'chomer. Ein onshin min hadin. That is, it's a certain concept that if the Torah wanted you to have a punishment, it said so explicitly. And it's not for us coming with drashot to come and say that I can learn out in some logical fashion that the Torah wants to give you an onesh. So I didn't have time to, this comes up a few times else in the Gemara, it's in Sanhedrin and some other places, but it bothered me, and I haven't found anybody who talks about this, but the Tana of the Braita here apparently thinks that kein onshin minatim, because remember his kal v'chomer, the original kal v'chomer was to say, I don't need the Torah to tell me isur onesh kares by malacha, because I could learn it out min hadin. I could learn it out from a kal v'chomer. But the Gemara doesn't come here and say, Ein onshin min hadin. So apparently not everybody holds Ein onshin min hadin. So that was just something that's in my mind, but I haven't found anybody who talked about it specifically in the sugya here. So I hope that doesn't take us too far off track, but it's just something that I've been thinking about as I've been going through this Gemara. In any event, maybe I'll just leave it at that. Let's go back because I want to hold our concentration here. So Ravina says, in order to understand the Tana of the Braita that we just went through, you have to understand that he's making a Gzeira Shava based on etzem hayom hazeh, etzem hayom hazeh. And he says, either this is Ravina or it's the Stam Gemara, Chamisha Krai Ktivi b'Melacha. There are 5 psukim that are written about Melacha, right? So we looked at this last time. We saw all 5. So why does the Torah need to give me 5 psukim about Melacha on Yom Kippur? So the Gemara says, Chad la'azhara diyamama, v'chad la'azhara delelya. Chad la'onesh diyamama, v'chad la'onesh delelya. V'chad la'fnuye lemigmar inui mimlacha, bein diyamama, bein delelya. So I need all 5 psukim, because I need one to tell me there's an isur melacha in the day, and one to tell me there's an isur melacha at night. One to tell me that there's a punishment for the day, and there's a punishment for the night. So what's the 5th one for? The 5th one is mufne. It's lafnuya. I don't need it anymore to tell me either azhara or malacha, but it's mufne so that I can learn inui from malacha. That is, I can learn an azhara for inui from this extra pasuk of Melacha for both the day and the night. So, how does the Gzeira Shava work? So the Gemara doesn't say explicitly, but this is what we're going to understand. We're going to understand that when the Torah says Kikol HaNefesh Asher Lo Tu'neh Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, and then it says V'chol HaNefesh Asher Taseh Kol Melacha Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh V'avarat Ken HaNefesh Imikar V'ma. So you'll note the structure of these psukim is completely parallel, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end is the same, right? The difference is going to be just what we already pointed out, that by Inui it says V'nichrata, and by Melacha it says V'avarati, but we already assume that that means the same thing. So what the Gemara is saying is this pasuk with it says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, this is superfluous, and so I can learn out from it the way the Tana said that I'm going to learn out from it. That I'm going to learn that just like the Torah is mazhir and then ma'anish by melacha, the Torah when it's ma'anish or ma'anisha by inui, there's also an implied azhara, and that answers the question. So the answer to our question, where is there an azhara for inui on Yom Kippurim in the Torah? I understand I'm going to learn it by Gzeira Shava based on the Be'etzem Hayom in both psukim, that I can make this limud, to say that just like the process of azhara and onesh applied to melacha, it will also apply to inui. Last week, when we discussed it, we also pointed out why do I need a pasuk for an azhara and an onesh both for the day and the night? Wouldn't we have assumed that I only need one, because for until now we're going on the assumption, like every holiday, that the day includes the day and the night. Right? If I say that something is asur on the day of Yom Kippur, I'm assuming that means the 24-hour period. So why do I need a pasuk for both the day and the night? What did we say?
If I recall, that would make it apply to the Tosefet.
No.
Because the pasuk explicitly says etzem.
And so right, and what does that tell me?
It could imply you could interpret it as meaning it only applies to the day. Etzem hayom.
Because it says Etzem Hayom. In this case of Yom Kippur, I need extra psukim to tell me that not only during the day is there an azara and an onesh, but also at night there's an azara and an onesh. So it does we already learned it excludes the Tosefet, but I will need an extra pasuk to fill out the rest of the day. And because elsewhere, like we just finished counting the Omer not long ago. So what does it say by the right? Um, no, no, not that pasuk. It says the bringing of the Omer is be'etzem hayom. You have to do right. You have to do the Ktsirata Omer be'etzem hayom, and the understanding of that is that it had to be done during daylight hours. So it's reasonable to say that if the Torah says that you're chayav malacha and inui be'etzem hayom, that maybe means you're only chayav during daylight hours. So I need extra psukim to tell me that the azhara and the onesh both also apply at night. Okay, at this point in the Gemara, so we understand at this point how this Tana of the Braita answered the question. The question was, why doesn't the Torah give us an azhara for inui on Yom Kippur? It gives us an onesh, but not an azhara. So what's the answer?
We learn it from a Gezer Shava based on the word etzem.
Very good. The Torah didn't have to say it explicitly because we learn the azhara from Melacha based on Gezer Shava of etzem etzem. That's the answer to the question. So at this point in the overall sugya, I had Reish Lakish's question, and he said there is no answer. I had Rav Ashi who said, I should put it this way. Reish Lakish says there isn't an answer. It's not. That's not right. Reish Lakish says there can't be an answer because the Torah couldn't have phrased the pasuk to give us an azhara. Rav Ashi counters that by saying no, the Torah could have, and that's left as teku. So in other words, I don't have a counter from Reish Lakish, so I just leave that. That just stands. But now I have an actual answer to the question from the Tana. So the Tana tells me, like Michael Werner just said, that the Torah doesn't say explicitly the azhara by inui, because I'm going to learn it out from Gezer Shava from Malacha, based on the psukim of etzem etzem. So that's the answer. So basically, at this point, we got up more or less to where we got up last week, but I hope it's a little bit clearer than last time. And then we're going to go on and we'll see that there are other answers to this question. Other people tried to answer the question, each in their own way. But as I promised, I'm going to limit the shiur as close to an hour as possible. So this is a good place to stop. next week, God willing, we will pick up from here the Vei Rabbi Yishmael. And he's going to bring it from a different trasha. So we'll leave it until next time. So are there any last questions or comments? Okay, so you're all ready for your final exam. All right, Bezrat Hashem. I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.